How did you not go at all? If I were you, I'd check your neck before accusing someone. The entire ballroom froze. Victoria, the billionaire CEO's wife, stood motionless, hands still extended, finger pointed accusingly at a young black waitress. Her face, once painted with icy confidence, cracked under the weight of confusion. Cameras flashed, phones recorded. The tension in the room could shatter glass. Moments earlier, the gala had been flawless. Crystal chandeliers shimmered. Jazz filled the air. Politicians, celebrities, and tycoons mingled beneath golden light. Then a scream, a missing necklace, and just like that, the spotlight turned on Maya. She was 24, a waitress, and blacked. Victoria didn't ask. She accused loudly, publicly, crudely. "You people don't belong here," she snapped, venom in her voice. "You're lucky we even let you serve our table." Every eye turned to Maya alone, cornered, powerless. But she didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't plead. She looked straight at Victoria and delivered that line with a calm of a queen. "If I were you, I'd check your neck before accusing someone." And as if commanded by fate, Veronica's fingers touched her collarbone. The diamond necklace, the very one she had sworn was stolen, was right there, glinting under the chandelier, exactly where she'd put it 2 hours ago. Gasps echoed, laughter bubbled, whispers flew. And Zariah, she simply turned, smoothed her apron, and walked away. But that night was just the beginning. This is not just a scandal. This is a black story, one of strength, dignity, and fire. What happened next exposed secrets the rich prayed would stay buried. What one black woman did shook a dynasty and flipped the script on privilege, power, and prejudice. You don't want to miss this, because when the truth wears heels and serves tables, even the mighty fall. So stay with me. This story gets deeper, darker, and way more satisfying. And if you believe stories like these matter, tap that like button and stick around. The real power, it's just getting started. Maya was not the kind of girl who came from privilege. She wasn't raised in country clubs or chauffeured to school in black Escalades. She grew up in a modest neighborhood in South Atlanta, where the streets were cracked, the lights flickered at night, and the sound of sirens was more common than birdsong. Her mother, a retired Army medic turned night shift caregiver, always told her, "We don't fold under pressure, baby. We rise in it." Maya carried those words in her bones. She was in her early 20s, tall, poised, athletic, with smooth, dark skin that glowed in the light, and a magnetic beauty that turned heads wherever she went. She wasn't loud or flashy. Her presence was quiet, but it demanded respect. She wore her natural hair like a crown, unapologetic and proud. People noticed her, not just for her looks, but for the energy she brought into a room. Calm, controlled, focused. She had studied graphic design at community college, dreamed of opening her own studio one day. But dreams cost money, and student debt is brutal. So she did what so many dreamers do. She hustled. Nights, weekends, holidays, Maya worked tables. And when she got the offer to serve at the Silvers, she jumped. The Silvers wasn't just any restaurant. It was the crown jewel of downtown Austin, Texas. The kind of place that had a 4-month waiting list, valet parking only, and a no-phone policy so strict it could get a guest banned. The ceilings were vaulted, the wine list was a novel, and the chandeliers imported from Italy. But for Zariah, it was more than a job. It was a battlefield in disguise. Because in this world, people saw her skin before they saw her skill. And there were unspoken rules. Smile, but not too much. Speak only when spoken to. Blend in. Stay small. Then there was Veronica Lancaster. She wasn't just rich. She was the queen of the billionaires, the kind of woman whose Instagram had more power than a Senate campaign. She was always dripping in diamonds, dressed in sharp designer gowns that screamed old money. Married to David, the ruthless founder of Dinix Global, she controlled rooms with a glance, and she hated people like Zariah. Not openly, of course. That would be Lonco. Her prejudice came dressed in compliments with thorns, in comments laced with venom disguised as curiosity. And on the night of the Dinix Children's Gala, the biggest night of the year, Maya was assigned to her table. She just didn't know yet that Victoria had already picked her target. The Crown and Sage wasn't just a restaurant. It was a fortress of formality. On the outside, it looked like something out of an old European painting. Black wrought iron gates, white stone columns, and rose bushes trimmed like they were hand-sculpted. But inside, it was pure precision. Every napkin had to be folded to an exact triangle. Every glass aligned perfectly 2 inches from the edge of the table, and a staff. They followed rules tighter than a Navy admiral ship. Before anyone got hired at the Crown and Sage, they had to go through a week-long orientation. No exceptions, not even for someone with years of experience. Maya remembered her first day in that cold, polished back room like it was yesterday. A man in a gray suit, holding a laser pointer and no smile, stood in front of 10 recruits and laid out the law. "Rule number 1, he said, you do not speak unless spoken to." He clicked the remote. "Rule number 2, you do not make eye contact with VIPs unless they initiate." Click. "Rule number 3, you do not react no matter what they say." There was no room for emotion, no room for mistakes. If a guest spilled wine and blamed you, you apologized. If confrontation begins, black story, someone insulted your appearance, you smiled. If they snapped their fingers, you answered like it was a polite invitation. Management called it luxury discretion. The staff called it the silence. It wasn't written in the employee handbook, but everyone knew it. Stay silent. Blend in. Be invisible, especially if you were young or female or black. Maya learned quickly. On her second shift, she watched a fellow server get demoted to coat check for rolling his eyes after a guest called him boy. That's when it hit her. This wasn't just a job. This was survival. They didn't want personalities. They wanted shadows in pressed uniforms. Even during emergencies, protocol reigned. If a fire alarm went off, servers were trained to walk, not run. If a fight broke out, they were to disappear into the back like smoke. There was one rule that sat heavier than all the others. Do not challenge a guest, ever, especially not someone like Victoria. To break the code of silence at the Crown and Sage was to risk your job, your reputation, and in Zarya's case, your dignity. But rules are only rules until someone decides to rewrite them. Zarya's first shift serving the bib section felt like walking a tightrope blindfolded. Every movement had to be measured. Every breath counted. She'd memorized the seating chart, wine pairings, and dietary restrictions. She had triple-checked her uniform, tied her apron with perfect symmetry, and repeated the yes ma'am in her head like a prayer. Then Victoria walked in. She didn't just enter the room, she owned it. Hair pinned in a flawless shiny, lips the color of blood, and diamonds on every finger. Victoria moved like royalty, inspecting her empire. A hush fell over the staff. One server straightened his posture mid-step. Another stepped aside like a servant, clearing the way for a queen. Maya had never seen someone so polished, yet so cold. The hostess led Victoria and her entourage to table 1, center stage under the chandelier. As Maya approached with a wine menu, she rehearsed the greeting in her mind. "Good evening, Mrs. Lancaster. May I recommend our house Chardonnay for the evening?" But before she could speak, Veronica raised a manicured hand and said flatly, "You knew?" Zarya nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Zarya, I'll be your server tonight." Victoria tilted her head slightly, eyes narrowing like she was inspecting a stain on a silk blouse. They're really hiring anyone these days?" she said just loud enough for the table to hear. Her friends chuckled behind champagne flutes. Maya stood still, smile soft, shoulders square. The silence was deafening. Victoria leaned in. Not enough for the table, just enough for Zarya. "Let me be clear," she whispered. "I like my wine cold, my plate hot, and my servers invisible. Got it?" Maya looked her in the eye, not defiantly, but calmly. "Crystal clear, ma'am," she replied. Victoria smirked like she'd just marked her territory. "Well, see." The rest of the dinner went by in stiff silence. Victoria made her demands subtle but sharp. A new fork if one so much as brushed the tablecloth. A different wine glass because the rim wasn't perfectly symmetrical. And the salad dressing on the side. But only after Maya had already served it. None of it was accidental. It was a test. A message. Maya didn't flinch. She moved like water around every obstacle. But she knew this wasn't over. Victoria wasn't done. And in her gut, Zoraya could feel it. This was war, a quiet, calculated, perfectly manicured war. From that night forward, Victoria made it her mission to break Zoraya Ellis. It wasn't loud, it wasn't public. It was quiet warfare, the kind only the rich and ruthless know how to wage. Victoria didn't scream or curse. No, she weaponized politeness. She wrapped cruelty in silk. It started softly. Victoria began requesting Zoraya by name. Every time she dined at the Crown and Sage, and she dined often, she insisted that the tall one with the afro serve table. To the untrained eye, it might have looked like favoritism, but inside the staff break room, everyone knew better. Maya was the target. First came the impossible demands. The water had to be precisely 52 degrees, no ice, but cold enough to sting. The lemon wedges had to be sliced exactly 1/8 of an inch thick. Her butter had to be softened, but not melted, placed on a chilled porcelain dish that matched her plate's trim. If it didn't match, it was sent back. Maya followed every instruction with military precision, but it was never enough. One evening, Victoria accused her of delivering the soup too slowly, claiming it arrived lukewarm. Another night, she said the wine Maya poured had too much swirl in the glass. She once called over the manager because Maya had smiled too long after greeting her. She looked smug, Victoria said with a practiced frown, like she was mocking me. Behind the scenes, whispers started. Some servers began avoiding Zoraya. They didn't want to get caught in Veronica's crosshairs. Management, nervous about offending their most influential guest, started pulling Maya from other sections, isolating her, assigning her only to less busy shifts unless Veronica requested her, and she always did. Then came the boiling point. One night, Victoria accidentally spilled hot tea on her own lap during dessert. Gasps went up around the table, and without missing a beat, she screamed, "She burned me!" Twist revealed, racist stories. Maya stood frozen, tray still balanced on her hand, eyes wide in shock. Security was called. The manager rushed in. Veronica's voice trembled with fake outrage as she clutched her silk gown. She wasn't paying attention, she was distracted. I want her written up immediately. But here's the thing about people like Veronica. They always underestimate people like Zoraya, because Zoraya had already started keeping notes, dates, times, comments, incidents. She didn't react. She documented. And while Victoria thought she was building a case to ruin a young black woman's career, Maya was quietly building one to end hers. Working at the Crown and Sage gave Maya a front-row seat to the world of the ultra-rich, a world most people never see. One where smiles are rehearsed, loyalty is bought, and everything, absolutely everything is for sale. She watched as billionaires ordered $3,000 bottles of wine without blinking. She saw politicians laugh too loudly at jokes that weren't funny, hoping to secure donations. She learned quickly that the richest people rarely raise their voices, but they never had to. Power doesn't shout, it whispers, and it always gets heard. But no one whispered louder than Victoria. On the surface, Victoria was elegance in motion. Philanthropist, fashion icon, the face of the Lancaster Foundation for Pediatric Health. Her face graced magazine covers. Her name was on hospital wings. She was the kind of woman who gave $10,000 at a charity auction and then fired her stylist for bringing the wrong shade of nude heels. But behind the scenes, Victoria was something else entirely. Maya first caught a glimpse of the real Veronica one night after hours while cleaning up the private lounge. She had gone in to grab a tray someone had left behind and paused when she heard voices coming from the corner booth. Victoria was on the phone, loud, angry, unfiltered. She wants to audit the foundation, then threaten to pull her grant. No one audits us unless they want their careers ruined. Make that clear. Maya froze. She stayed hidden, her heart pounding in her chest, listening as Victoria laid out instructions to manipulate tax filings and silence a board member who had started asking questions about where the donation money really went. The Lancaster Foundation for Pediatric Health, the one with all the glossy marketing and teary-eyed commercials. It was a front, a tax shelter, a cover for financial games so complex they'd make a Wall Street lawyer sweat. Saria's hands trembled, not just from fear, but from rage. She'd served at that gala. She'd seen real parents crying as Veronica gave her speech about hope and healing, and now she knew it was all a lie. That night, something shifted in Zaria. Veronica's cruelty was no longer just personal, it was systemic. It was the kind of evil that smiled in your face while stealing from sick children. Maya didn't say a word. She just backed away quietly, tray still in hand. But her eyes had been opened. And what she saw behind the curtain, it made everything personal. Maya knew she couldn't win this fight by raising her voice or causing a scene. Not in a place like the Crown and Sage. Not in a world built to protect people like Veronica. So instead, she got smart. She started small, collecting details, every comment, every insult, every setup. She wrote it all down, dates, times, names. She saved receipts, marked shifts where Victoria had made demands beyond policy, and even noted which managers ignored her complaints. She upgraded her phone with a voice recorder app, discreet and silent. She hid a tiny recorder in her apron pocket, just in case. And after overhearing that conversation about the foundation, she began reading everything she could about nonprofit tax law and how rich people manipulate the system. Then she did something bold. She reached out to someone. His name was Jonah Blake, an independent investigative journalist known for exposing corruption in big business and political circles. He wasn't CNN, he wasn't flashy, but his stories were solid, real, and he had a reputation for protecting his sources. Maya sent him an anonymous tip using a throwaway email. Check the Lancaster Foundation's 990 tax filings. The numbers don't add up. You'll find discrepancies between reported donations and actual disbursements. She expected silence, but 2 days later she got a reply. Call me. We need to talk. Maya hesitated. This wasn't a game anymore. This was big, dangerous even. But then she remembered the mother at the gala holding her sick child while Victoria smiled for the cameras. That image stuck. It lit a fire in her, so she called. What followed was a quiet partnership. Maya provided context, insider details, names of board members, timelines, even snippets of recorded conversations. Jana worked in the background, verifying everything, building a story strong enough to stand on its own. Maya still showed up for work, smile in place, voice calm, posture perfect. But beneath the surface, she was sharpening her sword. And for the first time, Victoria wasn't the only one holding power. As the days crept closer to the annual Dinix Foundation Gala, the pressure inside the Crown and Sage became suffocating. Every member of the Redemption and Reform Black Waitress staff was on edge, rehearsing their steps like soldiers preparing for a high-stakes mission. The guest list included celebrities, CEOs, senators, and foreign dignitaries. The event would be broadcast live. No room for error, no space for humanity. But for Zaria, it wasn't just about executing a perfect dinner service. It was about surviving Victoria. In the weeks leading up to the gala, Veronica's behavior grew more unpredictable and more dangerous. She'd stopped by the restaurant unannounced, demanding to see the table settings. She criticized the floral arrangements, called the wine selection cheap, and insulted the pastry chef to his face. She micromanaged everything except the one thing she should have worried about, her own secrets. Maya remained her assigned server. By then, it was clear to everyone that Veronica's obsession had shifted into something uglier. She wasn't just trying to humiliate Saria, she was trying to break her spirit. But Saria never flinched. Then came the stunt. 3 nights before the gala, Victoria hosted a private tasting for her closest friends. She arrived late, dressed in all white, her entourage buzzing around her like designer-clad hornets. Maya was assigned to serve the head table again. The evening seemed smooth until dessert. Victoria ordered a glass of Bordeaux and a delicate slice of tiramisu. As Maya approached with a tray, Victoria turned suddenly and bumped into her with dramatic flair, sending the wine flying right onto her own custom Valentino gown. Gasps echoed, then silence. Victoria stood slowly, her face twisting into theatrical rage. "This dress costs more than your car," she hissed. "You're careless. You're incompetent. You're here because of pity hires, not merit." Maya looked her dead in the eye, calm, controlled. "I apologize, ma'am," she said softly, "but you turned." The room held its breath. Veronica's lips tightened, but she said nothing more. She simply turned and stormed out, leaving a trail of red wine and tension behind her. After that night, even the staff knew something bigger was coming, something neither of them could walk away from untouched. And as the night of the gala drew near, the air inside the Crown and Sage didn't just buzz with pressure, it vibrated with the promise of reckoning. The night of the Dinks Foundation Gala arrived like a thunderstorm in a silk dress. The Crown and Sage had never looked more immaculate. Gold-trimmed place cards shimmered under soft candlelight. Violins played from a hidden corner of the ballroom. Cameras flashed from every angle as Texas Most Powerful walked the red carpet in diamonds and tailored tuxedos. Maya stood in the staff prep area, hands steady, breath calm. She wore the same black uniform she always wore, but something about her felt different tonight. Grounded, ready, her tray was perfectly balanced. Her steps measured, but her eyes focused like steel. Across the room, Victoria made her entrance. Draped in deep emerald green, she looked every bit the billionaire's wife. Her blonde hair swept into an intricate updo. Her jewelry sparkled with calculated elegance. But behind the poise, there was a flicker, an edge of something unsettled. Victoria was used to being adored, feared, untouchable. Tonight, she would be neither. Maya served the Lancaster table with mechanical precision. No mistakes, no hesitation. Victoria barely acknowledged her, offering only clipped nods and icy glares. Maya stayed silent like she'd been trained, but she watched, waited. Then, just before dessert, the moment came. Victoria stood, champagne flute in hand, and tapped it gently with a spoon. "I'd like to make a toast," she said, her voice amplified by the crystal mic system. "To generosity, to hope, to the children this foundation supports." Applause, flashes, smiles. She paused, then turned ever so slightly towards Soraya, who was standing behind her, ready to clear plates. "And let's not forget those who serve. Some of them, well, let's just say not everyone is cut out for this level of excellence." A few chuckles, then silence. Veronica's hand moved toward her neck. "My diamond necklace," she said suddenly, voice rising. "It's gone." Gasps shot through the crowd. She spun toward Soraya. "She was behind me. She's the only one who's been near me." Soraya didn't flinch. Instead, she calmly stepped forward, looked her in the eye, and said the words that would go viral hours later. 1 year later, touching stories. "If I were you, I'd check your neck before accusing someone." The ballroom froze. Veronica's fingers flew to her collarbone, and there it was. The diamond necklace, still clasped, resting exactly where she placed it earlier that evening. Flashbulbs erupted. Murmurs swelled into gasps. A reporter captured the moment live. The humiliation was instant, global, and irreversible. But Soraya wasn't finished. She reached into her apron and pulled out a folded piece of paper sealed in a clear envelope. "This," she said softly, "is a copy of your foundation's tax records, the real ones." Security moved in, but she raised her voice just enough for the cameras. "You siphoned millions through fake outreach programs. You used sick children as your cover." Suddenly, Jonah Blake, the journalist, stood up from a nearby table. "We verified every word," he announced. "Expect a full report in tomorrow's Tribune." Veronica's face crumbled. David rose from his seat, jaw clenched. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to, because in that moment, everyone knew the queen had fallen, and the black waitress, they all underestimated, she was the one who pulled the throne out from under her. The fallout was swift and brutal. By morning, Victoria's name was no longer trending for her gala gown or her flawless toast. It was trending under hashtags like #NecklaceGate, #TheWaitress, and Lancaster Leaks. Footage of Zoraya's quiet takedown had been clipped, shared, and memed into every corner of the internet. Millions had seen the exact moment Veronica's hand touched her neck, and her lie unraveled in front of the world. But what made it worse wasn't just the humiliation. It was the truth that came after. The Tribune Sunday edition ran a front-page exposé. Dynasty built on lies. Whistleblower reveals massive charity fraud. The article laid out the full story, complete with emails, financial documents, and insider testimony, all anonymously sourced, but undeniably real. Victoria had siphoned over $8 million through fake pediatric programs. Only a fraction of the money ever reached the hospitals or families shown in her campaigns. The rest, it went to offshore accounts, private jet rentals, and luxury wardrobe budgets. Within 48 hours, federal investigators opened a formal case. The Lancaster Foundation's assets were frozen, corporate sponsors pulled out, board members resigned, and David, Veronica's husband, the CEO of Dynex Global, filed for divorce publicly. His statement read like a press release, cold and precise. "I was unaware of the fraudulent activity conducted under my wife's leadership of the foundation. I am cooperating fully with authorities." He didn't defend her. He didn't deny the story. He left her behind. Veronica's world collapsed faster than it took her to raise a champagne glass. The media descended. Paparazzi staked out her gated estate. Former friends and allies went silent. Fashion houses dropped her from endorsement deals. Her publicist quit. Even her signature perfume line pulled its ad campaign, citing unforeseen ethical concerns. And through it all, Soraya, she stayed silent. She didn't give interviews, didn't claim credit, didn't gloat. She went back to work, quiet, steady, graceful. But everyone in that city knew the truth now. The woman they'd all feared, the queen who ruled with icy stares and whispered threats, had been exposed. And she hadn't been brought down by power or politics or scandal. She was brought down by a young black waitress with courage, a steady voice, and a quiet sense of justice. And no one saw her coming. Maya didn't ask for fame. She never chased headlines or looked for a spotlight. When the world turned its gaze toward her after the gala, she did what she always did, kept her head high and her voice steady. Job offers flooded in. Talk shows called. Journalists begged for exclusives. One network even offered her a 5-figure deal for a sit-down special. She turned them all down. "I didn't do it for attention," she told her manager quietly. "I did it," closing thoughts, "because it was right." Still, the world noticed. Within weeks, Maya became a quiet symbol, proof that integrity still held power, even in a world built on lies. Anonymous donors covered her student debt. A prestigious law school reached out, offering her a full scholarship in human rights law. At first, she hesitated, but then she remembered the mothers she saw at the gala, the kids, the broken promises. She accepted. Before she left the Crown and Sage, she gave 2 weeks' notice. No trauma, no speeches, just a thank you, a firm handshake with the general manager, and a warm hug to the dishwasher who always saved her late-night coffee. On her last shift, the staff gathered in the kitchen, something that never happened. They clapped. Someone brought out a tiny cake that said, "You made us proud." Maya cried for the first time since it all began. Months later, she started her first semester. New city, new chapter. But she wasn't just a student anymore. Maya launched a nonprofit of her own. This time, a real one. It focused on protecting workers in the service industry, especially women of color, from abuse and discrimination. She called it the Silent Shift, named after the quiet battles fought behind uniforms and fake smiles. She gave speeches at universities, testified in labor hearings, built safe spaces for people who felt invisible, and through it all, she remained who she was, graceful, grounded, and unshakably strong. Maya didn't need a crown. She wore her dignity like armor. And in the end, the girl who was once told to stay invisible became someone the world could no longer ignore. Life doesn't always hand us justice on a silver platter. Sometimes it hands us silence and dares us to speak through it. Soraya's story is more than a dramatic takedown or a viral moment. It's a reflection of something deeper, something we all recognize but rarely say out loud. Power doesn't always come from money, fame, or titles. Sometimes it comes from restraint, from knowing when to stay silent and when to speak, from standing tall even when the world is stacked against you, from walking into rooms where you're expected to shrink and choosing not to. Maya didn't win because she fought louder. She won because she fought smarter, with facts, with calm, and with purpose. And maybe that's the lesson we all need right now. You don't need to be rich to make an impact. You don't need a platform to expose the truth. And you definitely don't need anyone's permission to stand up for yourself. The most powerful kind of resistance. It's the one that moves with quiet dignity, the one that doesn't need to shout to be heard. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or silenced, remember this. You're not powerless. Your story matters. Your voice matters. And sometimes the smallest act of courage can flip the entire script. If this Black story moved you, inspired you, or made you think differently, do me a favor. Tap that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment below.